let's just talk about 266. I mean, let's start off with that main event. Why don't we? I've heard people talk about this a lot. I've heard people say everything about this fight. And I'm only going to say this once, and I don't want to say it again. I don't understand how you people continue to doubt Alexander Volkanovski as the best featherweight on the planet in terms of mixed martial arts and professional mixed martial arts competition. I don't get it. Like, what is it that makes you guys not understand how good technically and how good, of a fighter that Volkanovski is? This guy's the best 145er on the planet. You guys are all talking about Max Holloway after that performance over Kelvin Kattar, and yes, that was an amazing performance, and that was the best Max Holloway I think we'd ever seen. Shout out to my boy Kelvin Kattar, one of my favorite fighters. Interviewed a lot of people on this podcast from the New England Cartel, but you got to understand, Max Holloway is the best featherweight in the world who's not named Alexander Volkanovski, which makes him second best. And that's what you guys don't get. Like, I think you guys understand now after you saw the performance he put on against Ortega. Not only did he dominate much of the fight, I would say he won 4 out of the 5 rounds pretty easily, but he did get caught in some very, 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 very sketchy situations on the ground. One time, I believe he threw an outside low kick and tripped up, and the minute from when Volkanovski fell off of that kick and lost his balance to the point where Ortega jumped on his neck and got a mounted guillotine was about 0.5 seconds. I mean, they clashed off the kick. He fell. Ortega jumped on him in the full mount, locked up the guillotine choke, was chest to chest. He goes mounted guillotine, Luke Rockhold, Michael Bisping style, and he's cranking this guillotine. I mean, he is wrenching it and cranking it and pulling on it. He's got the legs completely tied up in the full mount. You see Volkanovski trying to get his chin tucked to his chest and get out of the elbow of Ortega, because if you can get your chin past that elbow and tuck it to your chest, it's going to alleviate the pressure on your carotid artery. It's going to release the pressure on your neck. It's going to turn more into a face crank, and you're eventually going to lose the grip. So he was trying to get that grip. It wasn't working. Volkanovski was squirming and moving around. He's shaking his legs to break the mount and the lock that Ortega has on his legs, so he can move his legs out, get to a hip, shrimp out, and then eventually try to gain top position. And it was so close. I believe Ortega rolled to his back and locked in the guillotine, and then rolled back to the mount. And Volkanovski was able to fight the hands, tuck the chin, and get out of dodge and save his title. I mean, he was gurgling, he was squirming all over the place. It was close. It's about as close as you can get to a finish in a fight without actually getting the finish. In terms of submissions, I mean, there's nothing closer than that. And then, in that round, which was the third round, Volkanovski was winning that round on the feet. We'll talk about the striking after we get through these 2 submission attempts. There was actually 3, but 2 that really worked. And the next submission attempt was when later on in the round, I believe Volkanovski, let me see. Let me look this up. All right, well, let's get back to what we were talking about. So Volkanovski versus Ortega. I mean, it was an amazing fight. It was basically dominated by Volkanovski, but Ortega did have his moments like we talked about. I mean, the mounted guillotine, which should have finished it off. And then during that scramble, Volkanovski ended up on top and was playing in the guard with Ortega for a little while. And he immediately gets locked in a triangle. Ortega's pulling down on the head. Volkanovski tries to do like the traditional defense for the triangle choke, where you grab a hold of your hand, you stand up, you stack them, you bring your legs around their upper body, and you lock your legs up and you sit down and pull back. This is going to push their legs a little bit forward, and it's going to pull your head out, kind of like you're trying to get out of a t-shirt when you have it over your shoulders and you're trying to pull it over your head. You just put your arms there, you grab a hold of it, you stack, bring the legs around, sit back and pull. And then if you do that, you usually can sneak your head out to one side, use the underhook on the leg, and follow that to then get into the side control, or get in and then eventually past full mount. But Another super close submission attempt. Volkanovski almost taps out. He gets out, ends up on top again in the closed guard of Ortega. But this guy's just a madman. He's a Viking. He's a samurai. He's a warrior. He's just pounding him with ground and pound. I mean, just right hand, left hand, hooks, straights, just pulverizing Ortega to the point where if there was 5 or 10 more seconds in the fight, the ref was going to stop it. And honestly, I would not have been mad at the referee if they stopped the fight in between the third and the fourth round. I mean, Ortega got up. He was wobbly. He could barely even get up off the canvas after the beating he was taking after Volkanovski escaped those 2 submissions. I mean, just pulverizing, just bop, 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 boom, 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 bop, just constantly just landing vicious ground and pound. Ortega didn't know where he was. I know Herb Dean asked him how many fingers, and he's like 3, 1, 2, 1. And he was like guessing, and Herb Dean let it go. But you got to give credit where credit's due. I mean, Ortega was able to come back, stay in the fight, and do some good work. But to be honest, I mean, it was just constantly in the favor of Volkanovski. That round was close. It was a round of the year. Both men finished the fights at different times. Ortega with the submission attempts, Volkanovski with the ground and pound from the top position. You look at the rest of the fight, I mean, Volkanovski was kind of just, he was playing around with Ortega. He was figuring out, was he going to bite on the feint? He's faking the rear right hand to then pendulum step into the lead low kick, depending on if they were southpaw or orthodox. When Ortega would go southpaw, he would step, and he would kind of play around with it and chop that inside low kick. Here, let's pull up some highlights. So, Volkanovski was very good at controlling the box that he had Ortega surrounded by. So whether he would circle left or right, depending on the stance, because Ortega did switch a lot in this fight, switch from southpaw to orthodox and vice versa. He was constantly chopping outside when Ortega would go southpaw. So he would fake the right low kick and fake the right cross because the overhand right was landing a lot over the left jab of Ortega. He would fake it, and then he would bring his legs close together, pendulum step forward, and chop that outside low kick. So it was boom, boom, bop, boom, but he would fake it so that he would get Ortega to bite on the feint a little bit, probably go to check it, and then he'd swing into the outside low kick. When they were in orthodox, it was a lot of jab, right outside low kick as they step in, jab, slip to the outside of their jab, and come over the top with the right hand. There were some times where Volkanovski would go overhand right and then shift his hips into a left hook coming forward. So it was pop, pop, overhand right, boom, step forward into a left hook, kind of like the pendulum step he used to get that inside or outside low kick. He would use that same step to then come over the top with the overhand right. I mean, it was a lot of control. I mean, you see at some point, even in the first round, let me go back. Hold on, give me 1 second. We'll explain this really quick. There was a point where Ortega was in southpaw, Volkanovski's orthodox, so it's opposite. You want to get that lead left foot to the outside of Ortega's right lead foot. He tried to wing in with a hook/elbow from that southpaw side. I believe it was a hook, but he kind of fell off balance. And then Volkanovski just kind of parried it away and shifted his weight and stepped over to his left. You're stepping over to the left, one, to get a dominant angle on the opponent. You want to get the outside foot. You want to move away from their power and get out to an angle where you can land your power. And if they're turned away from you, they're going to turn into that power when they turn back into you. So it was kind of just chopping them in. So when they were both orthodox, he would fake and boom, come in with the inside low kick. And then whenever Brian would come forward, he would jab, and, go up on an angle and slip his head off the center line. Or he would wait for him to come in, throw his own jab, commit to it, and then he would slip inside with an overhand right and a left hook. Sometimes he would fake the jab, fake the right hand, and then boom, come over with the overhand right over the jab of Ortega. There was a lot of things he would do. Sometimes he wouldn't even throw anything. He would just feint, step forward to close the distance, and then boom, come over the top with the right hand. Ortega isn't really good when it comes to fighting technical, clean strikers. And that's something you saw here against Volkanovski, and it's something I figured we would see, but judging off the fight that he had against Max Holloway, when you use a lot of fakes and feints, when you're constantly making the opponent change angles and you're switching angles and they don't know where the power is going to come from, and when they think you're going to come in, you don't, and then when they don't, you come in, that's always going to give a guy like Ortega problems, because although his striking is good, it's not as technically advanced in the ways that he sets up those strikes that he's trying to land. It's not the strikes he's throwing. That's fine. He has a good jab. He has a good one too. He has some good striking fundamentals, but the fakes and feints and the foundations that you set to get to those against the highest level of opponents, he doesn't have the capability to use those fakes and feints like a Volkanovski, like a Max Holloway, even like a Kelvin Cater. I'm going to throw him in there. He does use a lot of fakes and feints when it comes to the boxing, and I do think that Kelvin would give Volkanovski a lot of trouble because of the boxing that he employs. Here you'll see Volkanovski, he steps forward with a switch left kick to the body and then immediately switches southpaw. They were both in orthodox. He throws that left kick to the liver of Ortega and he switches southpaw. So now it's an opposite stance and he's trying to get the outside foot. And he's moving, constantly shifting angles. Whatever stance you're in, Volkanovski is going to try to either get you to shift into an opposite stance to set up a counter in the stance that he's in that you were just in, or he's going to use a kick, use a feint of a kick to switch stances and then have you circle into his power. He's always trying to get you to move into where he wants you to go. You're never in control of the range. You're never in control of the distance. He's always controlling where you're at. He's controlling the tempo and he's controlling the pace. And then if you try to come forward and rush him like Max Holloway did in their first and second fight, he's gonna control with the lead hand, control the range, frame off, fake and feint, and he's gonna slip inside of your jab when you're in orthodox and come over the top with the right hand and try to follow up with the left hook. So even if you try to close the distance, since Volkanovski is the shorter guy, he's gonna be the shorter guy against all of the top level contenders at 145. He's gonna have to use those fakes and feints. He's gonna have to use that feint, lift up the knee, kick feint to step forward and close the distance and then come over the top with the overhand right as he rolls underneath your counter and gets to an outside angle or rolls and switches to an opposite stance. Here it was inside left low kick, switch southpaw, boom, you're going to circle into the right hook because you're moving away from that low kick. So it's pendulum step, lead inside low kick, switch to southpaw, cuts you off on the angle, right hook, straight left. And then he'll go back to orthodox. He'll pop you with the jab and always keep his head off the center line. Boom, boom, low kick, step back. There was just so much, but the overhand right and the inside and outside low kicks of Volkanovski were the story of this fight for him. Ortega did good work with the 1-1-2. He did the same work against Max Holloway. You'll see that in their fight. But he was able to land the jab, fake the jab to the body, come up top with the 1-1, and come over the top with the overhand. One, because of his height and his reach, and two, because he set it up behind something. Whenever Ortega didn't set it up, and maybe he only threw one or two strikes, he wouldn't really land it. But when he would go a feint and then bop, feint the jab, double jab, come over the top with the right hand, feint the jab, one, straight right. That's when they would land because Volkanovski would be moving away. He would be moving away in a straight line. But the constant fakes and feints and stance switches were really giving Ortega a lot of problems, and that's something we talked about prior to this fight. And the overhands, the lead body kicks, everything like that. We're going to continue with our breakdown of the Volkanovski and Ortega fight. I just think it was such a good fight. It doesn't do it justice to only talk about it a little bit. So, something I said, which I kind of contradicted myself, even though it did happen, when Ortega would go southpaw and Volkanovski was orthodox, obviously, like we always say, you're going to want to get that outside foot. You want to step to the outside of that lead foot to, one, avoid the power in the left of the southpaw, and two, to line up the straight line or the overhand or line up the trajectory for your power side. So it was a lot of outside low kicks when he was orthodox versus the southpaw in Ortega. Sometimes he would fake it and go with that switch kick to the body like we talked about. He would go with an inside low kick. Sometimes he would fake the step in. There was a lot of stuff that went on. Ortega kept trying to land that check right hook. He would briefly switch back between orthodox and southpaw. And, when you're a southpaw versus an orthodox, the check hook over the jab is going to be your best weapon. So, credit to Ortega there. He just wasn't really able to get much done with it. The outside low kick and step back to draw in Ortega. So he'd go pendulum step, outside left low kick, step back because he knew that Ortega was going to step forward and try to land on him. And then he would use that step back to fire off the back foot and come over the top with the overhand right or a left hook. So it would fake, feint the right hand, feint the jab, jab, outside low kick, step back on the rear foot. As he comes in, then step forward and fire off that right hand left hook. So he's hitting you from the outside, which is backing you up. He's drawing you in on the strings like a puppet master or like a matador, I'd like to say. I'll say matador because I know other people have said puppet master. And he's going to drag you in, and then boom, he's going to counter you as you come in. So when you're on the outside, you're not safe. When you step forward, you're not safe because you're dragging into the distance. You're closing the distance advantage that you have over the shorter guy in Volkanovski by closing the distance, which is what he wants. So when you close that distance, he's able to lower his level, get the power ready, come over the top with the right hand, come over the side with the left hook. So overhand right, follow up with the left hook off the roll. So boom, boom, roll underneath, jab, jab, outside, lead left body kick, fake and feint. I mean, it's just, you're stuck everywhere you go against a technician like Volkanovski, and he is the best 145er on the planet right now. I mean, like I said, though, the best weapons that Ortega was able to use in this fight was the 1-2, and it's a lot of the times when he would fire it to the body, and then he'd fire it up top, fake, 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 boom, and he would land the right hand. That's what would work very well for Ortega against the champion in Volkanovski. And also what he would do, which was pretty interesting, is sometimes he would jab, Volkanovski would slip to the outside of the jab, which would be to his right or left. We're going to say right, considering that they're both in orthodox. So he's going to slip to the outside of the jab, but Ortega would kind of move that jab hand over to the side that Volkanovski slipped off towards. And that jab, even though it didn't land, it's going to be used as a measuring stick and a controller for the target. So if you slip to the outside of my jab, let's say we're both in orthodox, okay? You're going to slip to the outside of my jab, right? Yes, you're outside of the jab, but if I want to set you up for that right hand, sometimes I can use that outside slip to then take a slight step to my left, and I'm still measuring you with the jab as it's extended. So I'm going to jab, jab. I'm going to use that to measure. You're going to slip to the outside. I'm going to take a brief step to the left to follow you, and then I'm using that to know where my target's at. I can extend it and go with a backhand, or I can extend it and let go and control you on the opposite side of your head to then direct you into the overhand. So even if he missed the jab, Ortega was very good at using that to measure if Volkanovski would slip off it. Boom, 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 measure, boom, come over the top with the right hand. That was one of the best things that Ortega did, and it's something that worked for him the best in the entire fight. Just very, very good work. The jabs and the crosses, since he's so much longer, were the best weapons for Ortega. And obviously those close submission attempts, caught a kick, landed a punch, dropped Volkanovski off balance, and immediately jumped on the neck off that missed kick opportunity, or the caught kick. And, that's when Volkanovski was squirming out. He's trying to push on the hips of Ortega to get out and tuck the chin. And then that's when he got out. He shrimps his hips in a half guard to try to go with a half guard sweep with the underhook on the far side. He gets up to his shoulders, and then that's when Ortega tries to set up a Darce choke. It doesn't work. Volkanovski goes into the guard of Ortega. He's landing elbows. He's landing punches. He's brutalizing him in the guard, landing a lot of shots. Ortega finally gets control. He shoots his legs up, locks the head in the arm, gets the guillotine, or gets the triangle choke, turns the corner, hooks the leg, is controlling his own shin so that Volkanovski can't break it. And he's controlling this triangle. It's so tight. Volkanovski's able to turn, roll out of it, turn into Ortega. Ortega tries to hop on the neck again, tries to take the back. Volkanovski gets him to slip off. He jumps on him up against the cage, and this is where the ground and pound that we talked about just came into play. Just boom, boom, hooks and straights into the body, into the head, into the body, into the head, and just pop, 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 over and over again. And that's where I think the ref should have stopped it. But Volkanovski has a really good tendency of, when he pops the jab, to slip his head to the left of the jab. So he's going to jab and he's going to slip his head off the center line. Yes, you can slip your head off to your right and pop the jab, but he likes to slip it off to the left and pop the jab. It's almost like an up jab, and that's going to aid him in taking that left outside foot. If I jab and I slip my head off to the right and I'm in orthodox, it's not going to be as easy for me to get that outside foot or get that angle that I want to line up with my power. If I slip with my head off the center line and I keep it, even though my chin might be up, I can pull back away from the shots, and I can use that to disguise my sidestep to get that angle that I want to set up the power. But overall, an amazing fight, one of the best fights you'll ever see at 145 pounds. Close rounds, but mainly it was Volkanovski controlling everything that happened on the feet. Aside from the 1-2s, like we said, that worked very well for Ortega. And Volkanovski controlled it. He got out of the ground and pound position. He played around in the guard with Ortega and landed vicious ground and pound and from the stacked guard to show that, hey, I can get out of anybody's submissions. Even the best submission artist at 145 isn't going to give me the trouble that you guys think. So Volkanovski wins. I think he won 49-46. I think they gave Ortega 1 round. I think that was the correct decision. I gave Ortega 1 round, which was the 5th. Well, you could give him 2 technically. I mean, do you want to give him the 3rd round for those submission attempts, even though he got grounded and pounded at the end and almost finished? That was probably as close as you're going to get to a 10 or a 9-9 round. It could have been a draw. And then, I gave Ortega the 5th round, which he just came on, he pushed the pace a little bit more, landed some good combinations, kept moving forward. Ortega's a dog, man. He's not going to get out of a fight. So at the most, you give him 2 rounds, possibly 1. I guess I'll give him 1 round. I'll give him the 5th round, and I scored it 49-46 for the champion and still. And I believe that's how the judges scored it. And yeah, that's just my thoughts on the main event. A great fight.